Hello, everyone. Today is Friday, September the 25th, and this is the 18th edition of Book Fun Friday. Welcome. So, the young adult novel that I'm going to be talking about today is titled The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue, and it's written by the author Mackenzie Lee. I am so excited to talk about this book today. Now, you can see, this is a big old book. It's like 500-page novel. It's been a long time since a book this big kept my attention the entire time. There were so many moments where I was just riveted to the page, on the edge of my seat, wondering what was going to happen. Were they going to make it? It is that well written. It is so exciting. It is so good. I think part of the reason that makes this book so good too is the texture of this story is deeply rich. There are characters in here who are dealing with homophobia and racism and sexism. There's classism that's present, and all of these things are taking place in front of a backdrop of history. So this is also historically accurate in places, so there are references to real places, references to real people, references to real things in this story that all combine to make this very rich, profoundly exciting novel. So let me tell you a little bit about this then. The main character is a young man whose name is Montague. Monty, he goes by Monty. And Monty is kind of a wild child. He is a teenager who likes to run around and date and gamble and drink and party. Well, all of these behaviors get him thrown out of this extremely exclusive prep school and sent back home. Well, this does not sit well with his father, and his father is a beast. He's just a brutal, terrible person. He's an awful person. And so when Monty gets sent home to him, the father decides that Monty has one more chance to get his act together. He either gets his act together or he's out. No family, no home, no money, no title, nothing. He is going to put Monty out if he doesn't get on this straight and narrow path. And the way that his dad decides to put him on that straight and narrow path is to send him on what used to be called the Grand Tour, meaning that Monty would be visiting different countries in Europe. Now, obviously, his dad's not going to just send him off on this tour by himself, and so he employs what is essentially a chaperone to take Monty on this grand tour. And the idea is that the chaperone will introduce Monty to the right people. He will teach him how to behave in social situations. He will help him network and make connections with people. He will expose him to cultural things. All of these things his father hopes will combine to make Monty a proper, settled down gentleman who can then come back home and be in a position to run the family estate and take charge of their business. And so he sends Monty off on this tour with this chaperone. Well, in addition to the chaperone, Monty gets to bring along his best friend, who is a young man named Percy, and his sister, Felicity. Now, Felicity is actually they're supposed to drop her off at finishing school as part of this grand tour. And so they set off. Well, pretty quickly, things go awry. And at some point, very early in the novel, when things go awry, Monty and Percy and Felicity end up separated from their chaperone, and then they have to set off on their own to do what it is they're going to do. Now, I need to mention, too, that Percy is dealing with a hard personal health situation. And it's a health situation that was not at all understood at the time of this novel. This novel is actually set during the 1700s in Europe. And so Percy has this condition that medically is not understood. And so going on this tour really for him is kind of like this last hurrah before he gets sent to a medical facility where he's really going to be shipped off to spend the rest of his life because of this medical condition. Except along the way, these three, remember, they've gotten separated from their chaperone. These three come across an individual who says, I think there might be somebody who can help him. And that person is in Venice. And so then they decide, to heck with all this other stuff, we're going to go to Venice and see if we can help Percy out. And that's where the story goes. So I'm going to read a couple of pages. This is about a third of the way through the novel. Like I've said, they got separated from their chaperone, which in a way sounds awesome, right? Because now they're on their own, except they're cut off from money and connections and food and places to stay. So they're kind of scrambling around now and just sort of begging for food, stealing food, sleeping outside, sleeping on roofs, wherever they can be. And so in this particular scene, Monty and Percy are actually lying outside on the top of a building, on the roof of a building, and they're having a conversation. I press my head backward against the shingles, arching my neck. At least you'll never have to run an estate, I say. Then I realize what I've said as soon as it's left my mouth, and I fumble. Wait, no, I'm sorry. That was a horrible thing to say. Is managing your father's estate truly the worst thing that could happen to you? Percy asks. I mean, aside from obvious things like famine and pestilence and losing my looks? Yes. So maybe it doesn't seem like the best thing right now. Fine. But someday you're going to want to settle down, and when you do, you'll have a home and income and a title you won't want for much. That's not really what troubles me about it, I reply. So what is it? Percy asks. I feel suddenly like an even greater ass than before, for all the while I've spent moaning to him about my champagne problems, he's preparing to be shipped off to a sanatorium. Yet here he is, lying beside me, and pretending our futures are comparable. Nothing. You're right. I'm very lucky, I say. I didn't say lucky, Percy replies. I said you won't want. When I look over at him, Percy's got his eyes on the sky. We're the inverse of each other, I realize. Percy desperately wanting to go home and not feeling that he can. Me wanting to be anywhere else, but with nowhere else to go. Perhaps he can't understand it, the way that house will always be haunted for me, even if my father were gone from it. I cannot imagine living in this house for the rest of my life, throwing parties in the parlors and filling the cabinets with my papers, all the while ignoring the dark spot on the dining room floor that's never washed away. It's where I tore my chin open when my father knocked me to the ground with a single, well-swung fist. Or the hearth that chipped my tooth when he threw me into it. There are bodies buried beneath the flagstones of my parents' estate, and some graves never green. I flick a scale of tobacco off my pants. Lucky me, I say. Someday I'll have everything my father does. Perhaps I'll even have a son of my own that I can beat the crap out of. If I ever see your father again, I swear to God, I'm going to knock him out. Oh, Perce, that's the sweetest thing you've ever said to me. I mean it. hypothetically defending my honor. I'm touched. I close my eyes and press the heels of my hands against them until my vision spots. I know, I shouldn't complain. You aren't complaining, Percy says quietly, and you aren't like your father. And again, the title of this novel is The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue, and it is written by Mackenzie Lee. Y'all, seriously, if you are looking for a book that has adventure and excitement and faces head on so many of the isms that still exist in our world, again, this was set in the 1700s, but I mean, they're still here today. Classism, racism, sexism, homophobia, all of that stuff, and see how the characters face that and deal with that. This is definitely the book for you. Well, thank you so much as always for watching. I know I say this every time, but I really, truly do appreciate you. I hope you are well and healthy, and your family and your friends are well and healthy. Take care of yourselves until next time, and I'll see you then. Bye-bye.